All right, today's lesson, the goal was to identify angle pairs formed by three intersecting lines. So the first thing we need to do is fill out all these definitions. We have a lot of vocab today, and you got to understand what these words mean in order to understand the questions. The first one is really, really simple, parallel lines. A lot of you know what these are. What is your definition for that? Okay, two lines that don't intersect and they are coplanar. Two lines that don't intersect and they are coplanar. Good job. Pretty simple. A lot of you know what they look like as well. Kind of looks like this. We have one line, another line running beside it. The key thing is that they'll never touch. They actually have symbols that they'll put on these lines, and here's what they look like. Take note of this. They'll put a little arrow on it. These arrows mean that they're parallel. Without those arrows, then they're not parallel. Without the arrows, you can't assume that they're parallel. Do not assume that they are parallel. Next one's the more challenging one, skew. This is the one that people have the most trouble with. Here's the key thing I want you to understand for skew lines. Skew lines do not intersect. They're not parallel. And here's the symbol for parallel. I would start practicing that. It's two vertical bars. Saves you a lot of time so you don't have to write out the word. And they're not perpendicular. Another key thing that they write in your definition is that they are not coplanar. So that's another one. To be sure of. This one's hard to draw, so you really got to pay attention to the visual example I give. The next one is parallel planes. And remember, a plane is kind of represented by a sheet of paper. I like the visual for this one, so I'll sketch it. Here's one plane. Here's another plane. They're parallel right now. They're like hovering over each other. They're not going to intersect even if you extend them out forever. Those are parallel planes. Transversals, and the next keyword we got to be able to understand. What is a transversal? Somebody tell me. A line that intersects two or more coplanar lines at different points. So I call it the cutting line. It cuts through other lines. That's basically how I see it. If you have two lines like this picture up here at the top, a transversal is going to cut through them. And it's going to intersect at two separate spots. That's a transversal. That's what they're always going to look like. This green line right here is an example of a transversal. It cuts through two or more other lines. Good. Up next, we have a few different types of pairs of angles. And I'm going to do a little visual, a little drawing out to the side. I want your drawing to match mine. First off, we're going to do some lines over here. Are these lines parallel? No, because they don't have the arrows. So we're going to leave them non-parallel right now. But I'm going to come through and I'm going to draw this thing. What is that blue line? That's a transversal. Label it. Now the next thing we're going to do, make sure your picture matches mine, we're going to number all the angles. So I'm going to come through in a different color and I'll number them. Try to make sure your numbers match. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Make sure your numbers match mine. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to examine these terms. corresponding angles. What does the word corresponding mean? Same? Yeah, same. So this means angles in the same position. And when I say same position, I mean same position on each intersection. So I don't need to draw another picture. I'm going to be referring back to this diagram that we drew. So, corresponding angles. If I pick out angle 1, it corresponds to what on the other intersection? Yeah, angle 5. 1 and 5 are corresponding angles. I'll write them out here. What angle corresponds to angle 2? Angle 6. So once again, 2 was in the upper right intersection, 6 was in the upper right of the other intersection. What corresponds to 3? 7. And the last one would be 4 and 8. Pretty good. Up next is alternate interior angles. If you understand what these words mean, you can kind of figure out the definition. Alternate, what's that mean? Changing sides. Change sides of the transversal. Interior. Well, what's interior mean? Inside. Inside the quote-unquote parallel lines. And I'm going to put them in quotes. Inside the parallel lines. They're not exactly parallel in this picture. We talked about that already. But it's actually going to be only inside here. So, if I pick out angle 4, it's inside these quote-unquote parallel lines. What other one is alternate interior to that one? So, first thing we got to do is we got to alternate. We got to change sides of the transversal. So that means I'm going to switch over, and I actually slide down. 4 and 6. 4 and 6. There's one other pair of alternate interior angles. 3, switching over, 5. Good job. Once again, if you understand the words, you can figure out alternate exterior. We already talked about alternate. That means what? Change sides of transversal. So I'm just going to say change this time. Change over to transversal. Exterior. What's that mean? Outside the quote-unquote parallel lines. So if I pick out angle 1, that's going to be alternate exterior to, we flip over, we slide outside, 1 and 7. What's the other pair? 2 and 8. You could also say 8 and 2. Same thing. The last one is consecutive interior. That's the one people have the most trouble for, or trouble on. What does your definition from the book say? 2 angles between the 2 lines and are on the same side of the transversal. That's what I saw on one person. Anybody get a different definition? Okay, that's pretty good. Consecutive kind of means side by side, one after another. Interior, we already said, is inside the quote-unquote parallel lines. So I got to be inside these parallel lines. I only have a few choices. If I say angle 4, which one is inside? And really we could think of this as the same side of the transversal. So that would be 4 and 5. Good. What's the other pair? Good. I'll tell you what, a lot of people think this is super easy, but gets the test and then they forget to study these things and they make little mistakes. So make sure you study these. On example 1, it says, think of each segment in the figure as part of a line. Which lines or planes in the figure appear to fit the description? So the first one we're going to look at is part A. Part A says line or lines, plural, parallel to AF containing point E. I like to highlight these, so pay attention to my highlighting. You don't have to highlight on yours so you don't mess up your picture. Here's AF. It's up here. There's line AF. And it needs to go parallel through point E. Well, here's point E. Is there a line I can create that's parallel to our first line? EJ. Good job. So here's all you need to write for your answer. You don't need this sentence. You just go over to the side. You can write EJ. Is that a good answer? What am I missing? We are missing the symbol over top with arrows on each end. That's the line symbol. Now I can erase these, and I can look at the next one, part B. B says lines skew to AF. I'll highlight AF again. Skew to AF containing point E. I got to go through point E, but I want to be skewed to AF, so I'm definitely not going to say EJ. ED. The key thing about these is they're going in different directions. They're apart from each other. They're not parallel. They're not perpendicular. So ED. That's actually your only other choice on that one. The next one is part C, lines perpendicular to AF containing point E. I got to go through point E again, perpendicular to AF. What would you say? EJ we already said is parallel. We want to be perpendicular. AE. The reason this works is because that shape is a pentagonal prism. And on those prisms, you're forming rectangles, and the corner of a rectangle is always going to be a right angle, 90-degree angle. So that is, once again, AE. A little bit more challenging if you don't know your shapes. Last one, planes. So we're going to have a different type of answer here. Parallel to FGH. I'm going to find this one. G's missing. It's actually that point in the back. FGH. And we don't have an H either. They repeated the A on accident. That A down there should be an H. So they really screwed up on that one, but we can deal with it. Can everybody see which plane they're talking about? It's actually that pentagon in the back. That whole plane is the one they're trying to get you to focus on. We have to go through point E, though, to have another plane parallel to it. How would you name it? What did you say? EDC. Is there another way you could say it? ABC. Any others? Oh, contain point E? Well, still, though, if we focus on this one, it's going to have point E. So really, you're right. We should have E in there. So let's put ABE. So let's be really particular then. Let's make sure E is indicated. As long as you're talking about 3 letters on this plane and you're including E, you should be all good. Now I want you to try these checkpoints. Take your time, look at the picture carefully, Read the black stuff at the top. Make sure you read the description. Answer the questions. Here we go. Question number 1. It says, think of each segment in the figure as part of a line. Which lines or planes in the figure appear to fit the description? Parallel to MN containing J. Here is MN, right through here, containing J. So MN is right through here, containing J. We want to be parallel to it, so that would be JL. Line JL. Make sure to have your line symbol. The next one says skew to MN. Skew to MN containing J. What could we say? JK. I like that one. So that's right up through here. They're going in different directions. They're spread out from each other. They're not parallel. That's a good answer. Next one. We want to be perpendicular to MN containing J. JN. That goes up through here. We'd have a right angle there. So JN. The last one. Name a plane that contains J. So I'm going to erase this real quick. Contains J and appears to be parallel to MNO. MNO is in the back. It's that back little triangle. So I probably need to be naming another triangle. How do I name this other triangle? JKL would be a good answer. Any questions? The next little postulates are really important. They're definitely going to be on your test. The first one says the parallel postulate. It says if there's a line and a point not on the line, there is blank line through the point parallel to the given line. Did anybody get that one yet? Exactly one. Good. There is exactly one line through the point parallel to the given line. Here's what it's saying. If we have a given line and a given point, how many other lines can you draw through that point to be parallel to this line? Only one. That's what it's saying. You can only draw one other line to be parallel to the original line through that given point. This one over here is pretty much the same kind of thing. It's saying if there's a line and a point not on the line, then there's exactly one line through the point perpendicular to the given line. So here's how it's drawn. They have one line drawn, one point given. I want to be parallel to this line and go through that point. Sorry, I want to be perpendicular to this line and go through that point. That means it's going to be this orientation. Only one line can be drawn to go through that point. Good. I think these next questions are pretty simple. Example 2, it says use the diagram at the right to answer each question. Name a pair of parallel lines. AB and CD. AB is parallel to CD. This is good notation. I saw a few of you already doing this. The next one, name a pair of perpendicular lines. AB and AC. Good job. Is perpendicular to AB. That's a good answer right there. Good notation. Make sure to match that notation. Make sure to use capital letters as well, because that's what they use in the picture. Yours need to match. Last one. It says, is AB perpendicular to BC? I heard people say no. So once again, AB, BC. Why? They're missing a right angle mark. That's a good response. This next part just wants you to quickly identify what's going on in the picture. So we came up with angle pairs earlier. We talked about corresponding, alternate interior, alternate exterior, consecutive interior. It wants you to use those terms to fill in these blanks. So really, you shouldn't even need to read this stuff over here. You shouldn't need to read this paragraph. You should be able to look at the picture and tell me, Are they corresponding? Are they alternate interior, alternate exterior, or are they consecutive? So what are these right here? 2 and 6. Those are corresponding. I guarantee that that's on the test. I ran out of room, so I just abbreviated. Please write out the whole word if you can. The next one, 4 and 5. What are they? Alternate interior. And you can abbreviate if need to. Alt-int would be a good abbreviation. 1 and 8. Yeah. And the last one, consecutive interior. If you couldn't quickly identify those, that means you need to study. Study the pictures, study the diagrams. This next example tries to trick you up a little bit. It wants you to identify corresponding, alternate interior, alternate exterior, consecutive interior, just like we did in our definitions earlier. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to look at this picture, and we are going to figure out which ones are corresponding. Let's do that first. Corresponding. Which ones are corresponding? What's corresponding to 1? Look in the picture. If I cover up this intersection over here and just look at this one only, 1 is in the upper left. What's in the upper left over here? 3. 1 and 3 are corresponding. Let's look at 2 next. 2 is in the upper right. What's in the upper right over here? All right, let's go a little bit faster. 5 and, make sure to put the angle symbol. Last one would be 6 and 8. We're shifting now. We're going to alternate interior. So that's inside these kind of parallel lines. They definitely don't look parallel here. So if I pick out 2 alternate interior, that means switch over the transversal and slide down. And the other pair would be 3 and 6. Think alternate exterior, pretty simple. If I pick out angle 5, you should say angle 4. So once again, we switch over the transversal and slide way down. The other pair would be 1 and 8. Last one I think is also pretty easy. 2 and 3. They're on the same side of the transversal. You just slide down. The next one would be 6 and 7. The last thing you need to do are these 2 checkpoints. Get those done real quick. Once again, number 6, those are consecutive. Please write it out. Consecutive interior. This is because they're on the same side of the transversal. You just slide down a little bit. They're also inside the quote-unquote parallel lines. What's number 7? Yeah, a lot of people got that one. Not many missed this one. Alternate exterior. Good job.